Welcome to 22 and You podcast, and I'm excited to share time today with Rachel Radway. Rachel is coming to us today from Santa Rosa, California, where she has her practice and now her thriving career as an author. She's just won another award. We're going to go into that in a minute. But Rachel has done something I think really proactive and very much about thinking what's the big picture for somebody who is neurodivergent. And I think there's a lot of conversation. Rachel, first of all, from what I understand, you've been doing this for quite some time, and I'm trying to figure out how to get us both on screen here. I'm not sure how this is working. We should be able to do gallery. Come on, it's not doing it. Huh.
Oh, that's strange.
Well, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it.
Okay.
Ba-doom, ba-doom, ba-doom. Let me just check if there's any other thing I can do here. Multi-speaker, but it's just not showing. It's showing us side by side. Oh, well, maybe that's because we're both neurodivergent. I know I am. I'm
Doing things our own way.
doing things our own way. I'll figure this out later. It'll still be interesting. So here we go. We're set off on an interesting tone.
Okay.
So, how did you know? How did you feel? How did you understand yourself, your own connection to who you are, to recognize that this working with neurodivergent leaders, and I'm sure that includes some entrepreneurs as well, yeah?
Mhm. Yep.
Fortune 500 companies, is that what I read in your biography? You worked with Fortune listed people?
So I have been in Fortune 500 companies. I haven't I Let me back up and tell you a little bit about my background. So I have almost 30 years of corporate experience. I started out in writing and editing. I was a content strategist before that name actually existed. I was an editorial manager and director. I have also been in corporate communications and internal and employee communications and leadership communications, and done um, brand management and design operations, product design operations, and other operations and several other kinds of things. So, in all that time, I worked in startups, in national nonprofits, in Fortune 100s and 500s. As a coach, I have worked with a number of different people, more um, more startup employees actually, and some founders and other leaders. I have not worked with the Fortune 500s as a coach. I would love to, but that just isn't where the practice has been.
Well, okay, let's let them know that you would love to. Okay. But again, back to when did you realize, because that's a lot of time covering a lot of ground and what might have been several industries with you really kind of getting a glimpse of what's going on, what's working, what the messaging is, what the communication issues are. When
Mhm.
did this idea of seeing how people perceive differently really become a focal point for you?
So I'll be honest, it wasn't a long, long time ago. It's only been a focus for the last couple of years. I I have always known that I was wired a little bit differently, but I didn't really even know what that meant. I know when I was a child, I was always very, very sensitive to my surroundings, and I would hear things and see things that other people around me didn't. And when I say hear things, I don't mean voices or, things coming from God. I just mean I was much, much more attuned to my physical environment and the stimuli in the environment. And I would noises would disturb my nervous system in ways that they didn't, for other people around me. And temperature changes and smells and odors and things like that, and tastes. Um, and I was sensitive emotionally and I was sensitive energetically. In 1997, a psychologist named Elena, and I'm sure you're familiar with her work, came out with a book called The Highly Sensitive Person. And I read that shortly after it came out, and that opened up an entirely new world for me. I had really thought it was just me. I had no idea that there was an entire population out there who also shared this trait. And one of the things that Erin talks about in her book is that highly sensitive people make up about 30% of the global population. So that alone was eye-opening. I share now that I basically masked for 30 years in corporate. I didn't realize that I was doing it until very, very recently. I had no idea. I take that back. I knew that I didn't quite fit in. I didn't fit the molds. I didn't do things the way other people did them. I didn't know why at the time, and I didn't realize how much I was putting on a persona and trying to be like other people. It's not something I was doing consciously. About 5 years ago now, maybe somewhere around there, I learned that I have ADHD. And there is a reason why a lot of women, especially in midlife and later, are just now learning that they have ADHD and other forms of neurodivergence. It has to do with the hormonal changes that we go through in perimenopause and menopause, and the drops in estrogen that totally exacerbate um, symptoms that might have been masked all of our lives and that we just didn't realize because we were compensating for them in other ways.
Wait a
So,
minute, wait a minute. I find that really interesting. Because that's a little slice of the neurodivergent pie that might be new information for some people if they're not keeping up on it.
yeah.
And I think there's a really interesting intersection between how you're aware as a child. Hmm, hmm. I can play a card game with my cousins that we're wanting what is the color of the card, and we put them face down, but I can see the color of the card when
Mm-hmm.
it's down, and my cousins can't, and they think that somehow I'm cheating at the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hear about these two things about the intersection of the differences in our biochemistry, especially in women at a certain age, which
Mm-hmm.
I have been neurodivergent in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have not had the typical whatever. I've
Mm-hmm.
done something completely of my own style.
Mm-hmm.
I've been very comfortable from beginning to right now. Like I haven't had rocky blips and blumps and blimps. I haven't had it.
Okay.
So that sense of you're becoming aware of yourself, you're aware of your changing, you're aware that you're not like other people. I'm curious about what were some of your masking attributes, some of your persona attributes, and did they work well for you? Were they stressful for you? Did they glitch? I imagine there was some glitching. I'd love to hear you
Did they
share.
glitch? I love that question. So this is a really interesting question or layers of questions. I'm not sure that I can tell you very specifically what were some of the masking attributes. I can tell you that there were many times that I did not listen to my intuition. I did what I thought I was supposed to do, or responded in a way that I thought I was supposed to respond in, or led a team in a way that I thought I was supposed to, based on what I was seeing around me and not based on my inner knowing. And that is a lot of what masking looked like for me. There were also pieces of it that were not feeling free to be myself completely. So, um, one of the things that I have learned about most folks who are neurodivergent is we're not big on small talk for a lot of reasons. We don't love talking about things that don't mean anything to us, right? When you work in an office environment, there is so much of that. You're surrounded by extroverts, and a lot of neurodivergent people happen to be introverted, although there are many who are extroverted also. Um, Extroverts tend to process by speaking out loud, so they may say things that don't have a lot of meaning just because that's the way they're processing. And when you work in a group environment, people come in after the weekend and they want to talk about, their kids' games and the brunches that they went to and family events and, all kinds of stuff. I didn't know how to deal with that because it wasn't something that I felt like I could actively participate in. I really didn't have lots of, family events or things to talk about after the weekend. And I was focused. I was like, okay, it's Monday. I have, a pile of things I have to do. I want to just dive into my work. And on top of that, the commute for a lot of people who are neurodivergent can be an incredibly unsettling or unpleasant experience. So if you're dealing with public transit and wait times and delays and noise and people crowding your private space and, all kinds of things could be going on when you are in between home and arriving at your workplace. That sets our nervous system on edge. So we arrive at work in a state where like we need space and time to kind of reset and get into our mindset for the day. There's a bunch of people standing in the kitchen chatting really loudly about, whatever. If we don't participate in that, we are automatically labeled aloof or high and mighty, or I mean, there are all kinds of terms that people use for those people, right? So that in order to avoid those labels, you either have to mask or you have to not be in the office environment, right? So that
This
was
is, this is interesting. I love how you describe that because I remember as a young adult, even as a teenager, would be like, excuse me, why are they talking about this? Now, I was an artist, so that was great masking for me because I could just go and say, well, I need to go paint now, or I need to go draw now, or I'm writing now, I need to go do that now. But one of the things that made me laugh is I imagined in this age of everybody sort of getting to be you and do you, I think I should make the t-shirt that says on the back, I'm neurodivergent, or maybe on the front, I'm neurodivergent, on the back, I'm not really interested. I mean, really,
Yeah, I mean, so many of us feel that way. And yet, when you are in an office environment,
it's
you
hard.
do have to consider how you're perceived. I've gotten feedback that I was not perceived as a team player, and I've gotten it in more than one context. And looking back, I understand completely how how I was perceived and why. And yet, at the time, I was just trying to survive.
Right.
And so, the masking is a defense mechanism, right? It's a protective mechanism. And sometimes we have to pretend that we care about all of the stuff that they're talking about around the water cooler or in the kitchen. We If we want to, in most workplace cultures, if we want to fit in, we have to mask to some degree. And that was one of the things that work from home during the pandemic freed us from.
Terrific.
So now with all of the return to office mandates, people are again finding that they are struggling in ways that they didn't for the past few years. And it's something that a lot of neurotypical, I'll use my air quotes because I don't actually believe that that exists, but leaders who, are more towards the neurotypical end of the spectrum don't understand and don't realize the effects on people of these mandates.
Okay, here's another way I want to take another angle of perception I want to look at with from my personal experience. You're validating we kind of have a playbook that we recognize at some point in our lives. We go, how is it that I'm responding differently in this environment? What is happening? And I think one of the things that I've discovered in the work that I do is that we have a broader perceptual range that takes in more information
Hmm.
at a faster rate than people who are not neurodivergent. And I don't know if this is something you've discussed in your book, but this is really clear to me.
Yes.
What we're not less, we're more.
Yes. I love the way you put that, Anais. And there is something that I included in the book. There is a data point that you can find anywhere online. Again, I'm going to use my air quotes, the typical brain supposedly processes somewhere around 11 million pieces of information per second subconsciously, but it filters out almost all of that information. So the
Correct.
typical brain consciously processes only about 40 to 50 pieces of information per second. That this hasn't been extrapolated to all forms of neurodivergence, but there is a book called The Brain of the Highly Sensitive Person by a Dutch expert on high sensitivity called Esther Bergsma. And what I learned from Esther's book is that fMRIs and other scientific research have shown that highly sensitive brains, which are a subset of neurodivergent brains or a very overlapping subset, um, are structurally and chemically different
Yes.
from typical brains, and we have fewer filters. So,
Yes.
going to exactly what you said, we are processing more information. We are constantly downloading more information and filtering out less of it, which means we're on overdrive basically all the time.
Yes.
And we are perceiving things that other people aren't perceiving, and we're making connections that other people aren't making, and we are seeing several steps ahead. And when we don't realize that this is the way our brains work and this is what we're doing, we can't communicate that. So people misunderstand us for a variety of reasons because we can't explain what it is that's actually going on and why we're responding differently to our environment than they are.
I think this is so interesting. And I lived a life as a young adult and then as an adult where I made a choice. Am I going to shut down my awareness and live what for me appears to be a less responsive, less interesting, less vital, less risk taking, less dynamic, not less connected in any sense of the word, but the focus of that connection is a broader lens
Hmm.
rather than a narrow lens.
Hmm.
And am I going to agree to be that person? And so I think I was probably 15 or 16 and doing well enough in the normal environments, an excellent student, blah, 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 blah.
Hmm.
You know, really, blah, blah. And I thought, no, no, that is not a choice that I'm willing to make because of the nature and the quality of the information that I was processing and grasping that it was clear to me other people were missing that
Hmm.
was really important to the situation, the place, the dynamic, and the result of what was going to happen in all the intercommunications and connections. But one of the things that I did find interesting was I began to develop a moment when I would just almost physically just sort of put my hand over my mouth and breathe and just like, no,
To
don't,
not share.
do not share because they're
Yeah.
not going to get it.
Yeah. It sounds like you were incredibly self-aware at a very young age, which is a gift, another gift that a lot of us don't have. I was to some extent, and in others, I was very naive. And I think a lot of it, so much of it depends on our environment growing up and how supportive our families are and how present our families are. And there are so many of the people who choose to, as you said, shut down some of that awareness. People who choose to get involved with drugs or abuse alcohol or
Mm.
um, shut themselves off in other ways are doing it because they don't know how to manage all of the environmental stimuli and all of the energies and all of the emotions. And they often are in environments that are not supportive and where people don't understand them and where people don't have time for them. And it is, there's a very fine line between those of us who can do what you did and claim the gifts that you had, that you recognized and may not have really known a lot about them, but understood that it was a gift, and people who just are completely overwhelmed and need to find ways to shut down the overwhelm.
Okay, this is, I think, a really interesting place for us to explore because, as you know, one of the focuses of my aim for this podcast includes creativity and co-creativity. And
Hmm.
I think that one of the places where there's more room in the workplace would be where people could go and take a creative break. Because in my life, it was the access to my own creativity, which ultimately what we're talking about is the difference between having well-developed intuition or not having any.
Hmm.
That's what that extra information does. It is the basis of intuition. You're
Hmm.
getting more information. You have more data from which to make a choice. And you feel that. For me, it was always a very integrated experience. It wasn't just thinking,
Hmm.
also feeling, and it was also
Right.
aware what my body sensations were.
Hmm.
So I wonder when you talk to people now about, okay, how could we do this differently? And you're making suggestions because if you're talking to leaders, anybody who's in that position, they really do, especially if they're paying them, they want to get the best input from the people that they've hired to work with or to work for.
Hmm.
Are the conversations changing and are there now with all the STEM and all, are there, I just seems like such a no-brainer. Have just a place where there's music and where someone could just sit quietly and just know that this is a sacred space for people who are processing more information.
So I love the way you think, and that would be a beautiful world. And is the conversation changing? I think it is, but I say that slowly and hesitantly because it is changing so slowly and in such small amounts that the results don't yet look like what we would hope they would look like. There are architectural and design firms, for example, that now specialize in or have some expertise in designing for neurodivergence and designing sensory spaces that suit, different people with different needs. Most companies, though, won't invest in that.
Mhm.
So, a lot of the time, just because they're not even aware of the need for it. But in addition, all we're seeing now is people trying to cut back in every way they possibly can. That's just the landscape right now. So anything that feels like an accommodation that is only for certain people is not making it into the budgets right now and is being cut out of budgets right now.
Would say that's counterintuitive, that anybody who really understands this, and this, I want to have this conversation with you for a reason, because you and I have the opportunities to get people to listen, think about it differently, and
Absolutely.
realize at the back end the difference in productivity, the difference in workplace vitality, the difference in the sense of I'm happy to be here
Exactly.
contributing. Are the accommodations, they're really not that drastic when you think, I mean, I've been a teacher and I
Yep.
know like it doesn't take much to create two
A
kind
room.
a room, two kinds of lounges,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Just two,
Exactly.
just one more
Now,
room.
Anais, the number of, I would say that at least 90%, if not more, of my current clients are dealing with burnout among other issues.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've learned over the past few years is how neurodivergent burnout differs from, I'm going to say generic burnout. I don't mean to say that in a derogatory way or to diminish its importance, but neurodivergent burnout is different and can be deeper and longer lasting. And
Okay,
one of the,
say more. Tell us, and then we're going to all go get your book because you're going to get your book. But say more now for the people who could be listening to this in the car, on a radio, wherever, and they're going, "Oh,
yeah. So I will say more. So I will start with my own story, which is that uh, in 2014, when people were not talking as much about burnout as they are today, it wasn't as common. It wasn't something that was heard. I wasn't on social media much then. I realized that I was becoming kind of non-functional. I was a director at a Fortune 500 company. I led a global team.
mhm.
I was very successful on paper. I was getting to the point where I literally turned into someone else that I didn't recognize. I used to laugh at work all the time. I had lost my sense of humor. I was bitter and criticizing things and really found it hard to not let that come out in all of my interactions, except, with colleagues in a way that would have been extremely unprofessional. Um, I was working crazy hours. I had been for years. I had no personal life. I had no downtime. And even if I did have downtime, I had no energy or headspace in which to use it for anything productive. And
Self-care.
I had,
Yeah,
pardon?
it's for self-care. You don't have
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And I didn't even really think about what self-care meant at that point. I had no idea what was happening to me. I thought that it was the particular job I was in. It was a fairly toxic environment, and I knew that that was weighing on me, but I didn't understand why. All I knew was I could no longer stay where I was. At first, I started interviewing for other jobs and I got very close to another one. And then I didn't get it. And I am so glad I didn't get it for so many reasons. I really would not have been able to function in that other role. I ended up that year selling my home, quitting my job, and moving to rural Peru to find the time and the space that I needed to start my recovery journey. It took me years to recover from that. And
Mhm.
what I didn't know until, as I mentioned just a few years ago, uh, actually less than that, because it was while I was researching for the book, all of the information about neurodivergent burnout and the things that go into it. So not only are we talking about working crazy hours. So first of all, folks who are neurodivergent tend to be highly conscientious. We tend to, when we care about something, put 150% into it and focus on other people rather than ourselves. We tend to not be great with boundaries, not be great with saying no, and we want to please people. We can often be people pleasers. Um, we also want to be the best we can be to serve others around us. And in doing that, we lose, as you were saying, the self-care, the downtime, the everything. So we drive ourselves really hard. We tend to have higher standards than other people around us, and we can be perfectionists. All of these things, when you start piling them up on top of each other, can lead to burnout. Then you put a toxic environment, which so many of us are working in these days and just struggling to survive. Then you put in masking, which again, we may not even realize that we're doing, but it takes so much energy and it takes mind space we don't even realize we're giving to it, right? Put those things together
Mhm.
and you have neurodivergent burnout. And because it is often something that has been building up for a very long time, it can be chronic. I realized looking back that I had done this to myself more than once. That wasn't the only time. That was just the most severe time. I did it to
Mhm.
myself in college. I did it to myself after college. Um, and as I said, it took me years to fully recover. And I had to literally leave the country to do it. So many of my clients are dealing with work that are dealing with very severe burnout right now, and they are not giving themselves the time and the space they need to really fully be able to recover, which means the cycle is going to repeat.
Well, here's something I think is interesting for you and I to have this conversation because it's a really lovely point where you have the information that you have, and I have information about the human energy field because I am super sensitive and can perceive things that other people cannot feel, see, hear, or know.
Hmm.
But they can be adapted over time to learn what that's like for them when they are able to first recognize the self-sabotage that masking is. It's an incredibly debilitating form of self-sabotage. So for me, that's step one on one-on-one. Let's look at how you're doing that and what kinds of small, simple choices, a checklist that we could generate for you. You're probably familiar with this, but I have my own special one because I'm really wanting people to be aware of you're burning out because there are parts of you that you cannot see with your physical eyes, so that you don't necessarily want to believe that that's there unless you have an extraordinary experience. One of the reasons people take themselves out of the environment is because some very wise cellular part of them is saying, we like being alive. Being alive,
And we need a change.
and we need a change. And this is really a good thing. How do we organize that for you that gives you the space to take all that you can process it and literally find a couple of great buckets to put that focus in? It's not going to be expensive. It's not going to be super time consuming. And it will bring on a faster rate of healing because you are shifting your polarity into one that allows you to quite literally relax and reorganize the stimuli so that you remain in balance.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's why I love what I do.
It's fascinating listening to you because what I talk about in my work is helping people redesign and realign aspects of their life and work so that they can do everything that you were talking about. The tricky part comes when you're dealing with people who are in the corporate world and have been basically, I don't want to say brainwashed because I get it. I mean, I was there too, but they have no other frame of reference.
Mhm.
And if you are like I was, I mean, if you are single and don't have, an income coming in from somewhere else, it can be very hard to take the time that you need to do some of this work.
It can be impossible.
It can be impossible. And it's something that I see every day. How do you help someone understand that it's not just about their physical body, it's about their mind and their brain and their soul and their spirit. And self-care is not taking long vacations and bubble baths. It's listening to the needs of all of those aspects of yourself and then addressing them.
So here's an interesting thing, and you can give me your feedback on this. But we know that we have high achieving, Fortune 500 company leaders, these are the big boys that they've got the wearing the big girl and the big boy pants. Do they enjoy a glass of wine? How many would say yes? How many would admit to that? How many would admit to using other substances, whether that could be a drug, whether it could be a legal drug or an illegal drug? And they do this regularly and they spend a lot of money on it. And what those things do is it changes the state of consciousness, but it only takes a half step. And so what I love to do is say, look, you're already taking the half step. why don't I have you do an experiment with me where you take the full step? And that part of you that perceives differently after that glass of wine, 2 glasses, maybe 3, how your body feels, what you notice, what you get. Why don't we just do a 2-week stint of let's take a small chunk of that and work it out for you and just have you notice 3 things. And with those 3 things, when you can see that for yourself, and I can help you recognize that that's an energetic dynamic, now you're making connectivity in your own body awareness that
Mm-hmm.
is going to be beneficial for you long term,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll be good for everybody around you. Raise your hand if you want to do that little trial run with me. Now, that I think is a conversation that somebody who's in the really high pitch, high volume, they would admit to, or time in the gym where they're on a treadmill, or
Mm-hmm.
they're still pursuing some form of body related shift
Mm-hmm.
to get them into another state.
Yeah. It's a great way of thinking about it. I'm also thinking about a number of clients I have who really are not in touch with their bodies at all, which is something I can relate to because I wasn't for most of my life. I'm still not great at it. It's something I'm still working on myself. Um, but for those of us who grew up in intellectual environments, I am the only member of my family who is not a lawyer, who did not go to law school.
Okay.
Um, I was surrounded by people who were intellectual all the time. And that's the way I grew up. That's the way I, lived my life. And um, a lot of my clients are like that too. So they don't go to gym. Some of them don't give themselves time to work out or exercise
That's
or
true.
of any kind.
That's true.
And just even getting them to go for walks outdoors
Yeah.
is, it's one of the first things that I talk to a lot of my clients about. So I love what you're saying, and I'm trying to figure out how to get more people on that wavelength to really understand the benefits of it.
I think a short interval, because I know with some of my programs, they're longer. They can
Mhm.
be 4 weeks, they can be 10 weeks, they can be a half a year or longer. And the commitment to that, when you aren't aware of what assumptions are about to change because you've never examined those assumptions,
Mhm.
right? So
Right.
then the process, once you examine the assumptions, what's the shortest interval of time that we can bring people like that into it and make it a challenge, make it a competition if because they're sparked by competition, right?
Some of them are.
No, not all, but some would go for that carrot. And you have to you have to find out what people are so you can figure out what's the shortest interval. And in that interval of time, what way can we have you equate that wine of glass, for instance, or 2 wines of glass with finger painting,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Not to produce a work of art, not to do anything else, but have your fingers in the paint,
Right.
feel, and then have a result that isn't intellectual
Mhm.
because it can't be.
Right.
It isn't analyzed because it can't be.
Right.
All it can be done is shared with no judgment, right? So
Hmm.
like little little micro movements of want to take a weekend and do this with me?
Hmm.
Bring a buddy, bring a buddy. And then the language that you're using with these people, I think the listening has to happen first because you and people like you, we can hear what it is they're trying to communicate, but there's a gap in the
Right.
information. And
Right.
so for me, that's, ah, what if I were to say to you, I hear a gap. I think you want to say more. I think you have more to share. Let's reach for it. It's not psychotherapy.
Right.
It's not psychiatry.
Right.
So basic. And so that's one of the things I have done things like that with clients, and the relief is palpable because it's not linked to achievement.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. It's funny listening to you. I was just thinking, I recently got a certification in, um, it's not Lego Serious Play, but it is related. The coach that I took the course with does certify people in Lego Serious Play. This was sort of a micro version of that. But I have worked with a couple of clients now with Lego and getting them to build what's in their mind or build what they're facing as opposed to talking it through,
Mhm.
which can be, it's like the finger painting that you were talking about. I was also thinking you could even do it with Play-Doh.
Absolutely. Play-Doh is fabulous. When I worked as a teacher, there were a couple of neurodivergent kids, and people were not, that wasn't a thing yet.
Right.
But I had enough to know you and I need to sit down and we're going to just work with Play-Doh. And I'm just going to sit here and listen to you
Mm-hmm.
while you do the Play-Doh thing. And the
Mm-hmm.
changes that happened in these children when they were approached this way were the parents were like blown away. They're like,
I can imagine.
I have a changed child. And there were other issues because you have to really be sensitive, and for me, it's an energetic thing. It really does have to do with the chakras. Which chakra in this child hasn't flowered or hasn't been given room to grow or is blocked in some way? Well, let's find out what that's about. We had another little boy in the class. I mean, these are two really exceptional kids who was demonstrating echolalia,
Mm-hmm.
and people were trying to navigate around his echolalia. I took a different tack. I took a different tack of what is going on with his hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I invited his parents to take him to have his hearing checked. It turned out that he had, because he was a little kid, he was teeny, he didn't know he couldn't hear. And he was trying to respond in a way with the echolalia, with repeating,
Mm-hmm.
see if he could somehow hear it if he said it and said it more than once. Totally changed the family. So I think these interventions, and we're looking at people who are, they've already kind of gotten solidified
Right.
in terms of their compensations.
Right.
And then you have to key out what's the compensation. Is your compensation achievement or is it pleasure? If it's pleasure, is it physical pleasure? What is the nature of pleasure that brings you space in your beingness? So, anyway, I just think this is fun. This is to me
Mm-hmm.
like summer camp, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I talk both in the book and with my clients about finding joy and what is it that you find joy in and how can you bring more of that into your daily life. And one of the things that really strikes me is how hard that question is for so many people to answer.
Mhm.
Again, there's a tendency to be looking after others and not ourselves. And I had one woman say, I have no idea. I feel guilty if I just sit down on the sofa for a second. And one of the gifts of being wired differently is that we perceive that, going back to the seeing things and noticing things and perceiving things that others don't, we can find beauty in small things, in little moments, and in little places that others around us don't. So, for example, I used to have in the last place I was living, there was an avocado tree right outside my window of the window of my office. And even if I had back-to-back meetings, which I tried not to schedule, um, I could turn my head and watch all of these tiny little birds in the avocado tree for 2 minutes, and that would bring joy.
Right.
And then I suggest things to people like, keep video clips of your favorite comedian
Yeah.
handy on your computer.
Great
Keep a
idea.
little journal where you can doodle and, write little notes or draw pictures or, something like that to yourself just on the corner of your desk. Um, Music, your favorite song, just do a happy dance in between two of your meetings. Anything like that. Obviously, even better if you can get up and walk away and go for a walk outside or, do something that really changes your environment for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Anything like that feeds us and gives us joy, helps us recharge and get into that different space, even if it's just for a few minutes. It doesn't have to cost money or take time or,
It's so true. And I think when you can get to a place with a client, friend, family member who will try it
hmm
and see if and it's going to be more than once. It's not going to
hmm
be a one-time thing,
hmm
but to try it and notice what that new relationship with their own awareness generates as a potential suggestion
hmm
they might
absolutely.
not have come to without doing that little sidestep. So I
Absolutely.
think this is a really beautiful interlude that we're coming into because there are going to be soon, I believe, that there will be more neurodivergence than 30% of the population.
I believe there already are.
Right?
So, yeah. So there are figures that say that Gen Z, is it Gen Z or Gen Y? No, I think it's Gen Z. Um, Over 50%, about 53% of Gen Z self-identify as neurodivergent.
Mhm.
And one of the things that's important to note is you don't have to have a diagnosis to be neurodivergent. There are forms of neurodivergence that aren't diagnoses. They don't exist as diagnoses. They are not disorders. High sensitivity, your brain is structured differently, which means your brain is different, which
Mhm.
means you're neurodivergent. So I suspect, and I have heard other experts talk about this too, that the instance of neurodivergence is actually much, much higher. It's not only a majority, it's probably almost everyone. Honestly, no two brains are the same, right?
Right,
So how could there be a brain that's a typical brain?
right.
So I think you're right. And what's beautiful is that the generations that are now coming of age and are coming into the workplace and are going to be the majority at some point soon are much less willing to mask. They're
Yes,
much more aware of needing to be themselves and
yes,
not wanting to hide any aspects of themselves.
yes.
So,
This is going to be a phenomenal development for what I think of as the evolution of humankind, because there's a transition between hunter-gatherer,
mhm,
stem cell lab people, AI people, and the next big evolutionary step. I
mhm,
think many people have already taken that first, second, third step. They're already moving into that space. And I think what happens is how, as culture, as society, we respond. And we're seeing these small adaptations that give people more green space, place to walk, place to bike. The adaptations are starting to be incorporated more adjacent, if not incorporated, but adjacent.
Hmm.
So I'm excited because I think, and congratulations. And now tell us more about your books. Tell us about the awards because this is how this happens. Is when someone like Rachel stands up recognizing and feeling and brings all of that perceptual juiciness that she's got that's now mature into a space and she can communicate it in a way where people are listening to her and reading her words. Go for it, my dear.
Thank you. Well, I am super excited. I told Anais right before we started recording that I just learned this morning that my book Perceptive, the subtitle is Insights for Leaders Who Feel More, Process Deeply, and Think Differently. And I don't know whether you have any visual recording, but there's the cover. Has just won a third award. So in the past few months, the book has earned a Nonfiction Book Award Silver, a New York City Big Book Award Gold in the cross genre category, which I love because people ask me, what kind of book is it? And I say, well, it's sort of a leadership book, and then there's a little bit of self-help, and it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's nonfiction, clearly. It's part of my story. It
Mhm.
is parts of the stories of 16 other women leaders who were kind enough to share their time and their stories with me.
Mhm.
Um, Almost all of them identify as either highly sensitive or neurodivergent or both. A few of them hadn't until I reached out to them and we spoke. And the what I was talking about with them resonated really strongly with them, and they've become some of my biggest supporters, which is amazing. Um, in any case, it is really about the gifts and the challenges, which I talk about as two sides of the same coin, that come with being wired differently, particularly as that applies to leadership and the workplace. And when I say leader, I don't mean someone with an executive title necessarily. Those
Mhm.
are leaders. There are many, many, many other types of leaders and ways that you can show leadership. Um, but what I really wanted to get across was so many people who are wired differently have grown up with messages that they are broken or wrong or crazy or weird or all kinds of other things. And if you are one of those people, you are none of those things. Okay, weird. I've had people say, well, I really like the label weird. Okay, if you want it, own it, claim it.
Okay.
That's wonderful. But you are not broken. You are not crazy. And most importantly, you're not alone. As we were just saying, a
Mhm.
huge percentage of the population is neurodivergent. Everybody is neurodivergent in their own way. No two brains are the same. So, how do you describe what that book is? There's a little bit of neuroscience, there's some leadership, there's some workplace stuff, there's some diversity and inclusion stuff. I mean, it's everything. And this morning, I just was notified about the third award, which I can't even say what it is yet because I'm not allowed to talk about it until they release the winners' names and
Okay.
further
Okay.
information.
Well, that'll bring you back because this is a great conversation. And I really feel the timing of it because we are moving into, I'm one of those ones who can see the trends ahead of the trends. I
Hmm.
knew in August of 2019 that we were going to have COVID. I knew
Okay.
that. I shut my practice down.
Wow.
Really upset about it, but it was clear to me from all the various places where information was coming to me from, none of which was intellectual,
Hmm. Right.
none of it.
Right.
First sign was a dead chickadee in an unusual place. And everything in me went, pay attention. This is important. And within 3 weeks, right?
Right.
So we're coming into a time where that space within to cultivate the space within for you to, any person, to take their assumptions. First of all, identify what the assumptions are. That's
Hmm.
like number one.
Hmm.
You have to sort through them first before you can even recognize, well, where did this come from? Why does this matter to me? Do I want it to matter to me next week? Right? That's what your
Hmm.
trip to Peru is about. Was like, okay, this is it. Everything's off the table. I'm wiping the slate clean.
Hmm.
So to have the sense of forwardly leading rather than fighting in resistance
Hmm.
and having the communication, the cultural conversation about what's fabulous about this. And believe me, when the wave breaks to more than 60% neurodivergent, it's going to be shocking for a lot of people. But the
Hmm.
energy release of that, when you have that many people who are not choosing to suppress themselves or mask, it will be at some levels truly revolutionary. Do you read me? Do you feel
Absolutely.
me? You feel me?
I absolutely, part of what I'm thinking about, have you listened to the telepathy tapes
No.
podcast? Oh, Anais, you have to listen.
Well, I have to
So,
let no.
well, this is something that I have talked with a lot of people about. So there is a journalist who started learning about some non-speaking autistic children who seem to have a telepathic ability.
Absolutely.
And so the telepathy tapes have become this absolute phenomenon. They're now in season 2 and they're making a film and they're getting all kinds of corporate sponsorship.
Oh, I
Um,
need that.
but you did, but most people didn't. I mean, this is something that is just, I think it's part of the zeitgeist that you're talking about. People
Yes.
are just starting to, it's now mainstream. 3 years ago, it wasn't. So people are starting to learn about this and the fact that these autistic children who don't speak and people thought were intellectually disabled
You're
are
not.
actually not only brilliant, but have
Yes,
all kinds of communication channels that most of us don't have.
correct.
So this is the kind of thing that I think we're starting to hear and see more of and learn more about that is also going to support all of the changes that you're talking about.
Well, this is exciting, Rachel, because there are more of us who are able to have a conversation like this
Yeah.
and freely and without holding back and without being ashamed of how different we have been. And I had to completely extricate myself from my family. I was like, if
Yeah.
you can't figure out what's going on here, I can't help you.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go live my life.
Yeah.
And that will be another part of this zeitgeist is that there will be people who are in this mode of really a deeply enriched sense of themselves
Hmm.
as being just fine the way they are and recognizing what it's like to have telepathy, what it's like to be clairvoyant or clairaudient. I have all of those. I have
Hmm.
all of them. Fortunately for me, I took the sidestep and said, I'm going here because this is more interesting to me
Hmm.
in who I am than this little narrow slice of the pie. So I
Right.
think let's have another conversation. You have to send information about the third book when you get it because it can go in the show notes if you get it soon enough. And these are all going to be evergreen. And then also let people know how they can connect with you and what you're open to in terms of who you want to work with and how
Hmm.
it looks like. So I hope you have a few more minutes if you want to talk about that.
I would love to. Thank you. The first thing is that people can reach me one of two ways primarily. I am on LinkedIn, Rachel Radway. There aren't many of us in the world, fortunately, and you will recognize me from the posts on my profile and on my website, which is RER, my initials, coaching.com. So just RERcoaching.com. You can contact me through there. You can learn a little bit about me and my work through there. And I love working with bright, talented, high achievers who have always known that they operated a little bit differently and are looking for support in removing blocks or obstacles, in moving forward towards achieving their goals and their dreams, in being the best leaders that they can possibly be, whether that comes with a title or not.
Mhm.
Those are the people I love working with.
Great. Well, we'll make sure all of that's in the show notes and you'll message me because I do want to find out what the third book is. And I'm pretty sure I have an image of your book. Do I have an image? Did you send me an image of your book cover?
I think I did. I'm
I'll
pretty sure I
check.
did. We
If
can,
I
yeah.
don't have it, we'll get that because that really
Okay.
helps people to anchor. Here's the face, here's the book cover, and here's the conversation. So great. Rachel, I know you have an appointment coming up. Is that
I
true?
do. I do.
All right. I want to thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'll let you know when this is going to drop. I'm going to have to edit it differently because I don't know. I got a new camera and all of a sudden it's just you. And I okay, if I'm not in it, I'll be the voice, the disembodied voice. I'm okay with that. So thanks again and just keep going. It's beautiful. And I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. This is wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Anise. Thank you for reaching out and for inviting me to be on your podcast. And it has been a pleasure. And yes, just let me know whatever you need from me, and I will send you all the information.
Okay, ciao, ciao, and thanks again.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
22 and You podcast is brought to you by Living Lessons Library. And we're located in Philadelphia and would love to have you become a member. Thanks for watching.
I'm Catherine Wilking. I'm an author, a decorator, and a feng shui expert, and I love to help others learn to sort out their space, find fulfillment, and lead a prosperous, rewarding lifestyle. For more information, you can tap into my website, catherinewilking.com. Just use my name here and check out my latest book, Practical Feng Shui for the Office, 3rd edition. And let's get your space working for you.